All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the podcast. This is a very exciting one. There's no one on the freaking planet that I would rather have as the first guest. Nuno is my best friend in the world. He's like a brother to me. And we've been on quite a journey, a growth journey together over the last few years. And I think one of the biggest things for us is we talk a lot about how to navigate a journey of growth and like how to integrate these tools in our lives and how to live them with integrity, with passion, how to balance that with just enjoying life and the messiness of life. And I feel like you're such a phenomenal example of that. Like you're a breathwork facilitator. You have created epic transformation in all areas of your life over the last few years. And you still like have such an authenticity in how you live life. And I would be super curious, like to get us like warmed up for the conversation. Why do you feel growing yourself has had such a profound impact in all these different areas of your life? Like, why has that been a path that you've chosen? What's the inspiration for you to want to keep growing yourself? And then we'll see where that continues to take us.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question because actually the other day I was writing something that was pretty much the answer to that question, even though I didn't have the question, which was just something in the lines of it all started just with the dream of something else and knowing that there was a different way to live, that there was more to life than just going about it. And, I think you can just go around life and try to change everything around you, try to change the people, try to change situations, try to change jobs, but then you really understand that everything starts from you. It just starts from your inside, and if you change that, then everything changes. And I think that's what got me started. I didn't really know how to start it, what to do, what was growth even, but I just knew that there was something more, and it started by looking at me and going about that journey.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I know you feel similarly, but maybe not everyone watching this might feel similarly. But my perception is that a lot of us grow up in an environment where we're not taught that if something in our life feels out of alignment or if we would like it to be different, like we're conditioned to think that it's like what's at fault is like an external circumstance or someone else. First of all, what do you mean? Like when you say that you've grown yourself, like what do you mean? What kind of tools have you used? And I know you facilitate them as well. What does that look like? What does growth look like for you? And what was like the click to understand that your experience of your reality and your life is something that you're self-generating all the time, and that it's on you to change it?
Yeah, I think it kind of starts from what you're saying, that we're just conditioned to perceive the world a certain way, right? And if something is not working, then usually people just tell you to leave that situation, which sometimes you're meant to, but there's also this feeling that you don't really have a choice. Sometimes there's just the idea that if it's not working or if it's hard, if it sucks, it's just the way it's meant to be, and you have to just accept it blindly. And I think starting to work on yourself gives you options, gives you different choices. And yeah, in terms of the click, I do remember that I'm just generally curious about life, and I'm genuinely passionate about learning about different things, different skills, different activities, and as well about myself. And I think that's where all modalities start. They kind of start with just knowing yourself better, like self-knowledge, understanding yourself better, which then gives you visibility over why are things actually the way that they are and why are those situations that way. And across time I found so many different ways of doing that. I think the first things were journaling, and then actually the first deeper contact that I had with some of these tools, it was with you actually when you did the course many years ago, which had some tool like somatic tools, and then that's also when I started to do more breathwork, psychoanalysis, more regular talk therapy, coaching, just a bunch of these different tools that at the end of the day, I think they just give you this ability of having like different camera angles on you so that you can see different parts of you and understand how they are behaving and summing up to the world that you are experiencing. And therefore, if you have a different visibility, not only can you choose a different camera angle and understand things in a different way, but you also have the option of changing things because now you have choice.
Yeah. Yeah. That lands, like, because my perception is that, like, most of us, like, the premise behind something else is the cause for where our life is that we are powerless to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, in a way, like, with great power comes great responsibility. It's like, it's a great empowerment of self to, like, take ownership and responsibility for what's happening in our life. But it also, like, it opens up so many possibilities. How have you dealt with facing, like, head on the fact that, like, things that you might not feel aligned with in your life are your responsibility? And here's what I'm especially curious about is, how has it felt over the last few years to, like, create freaking magic and awesomeness in, like, all these areas of your life where you're just, like, your commitment and your dedication to growth, and, like, you don't, like, you do the work yourself and then you facilitate it for other people. Like, what has that path look like for you?
Yeah, I think originally it became a bit of an obsession, to be honest, because when you say, you're choosing to have more responsibility, right? So that can feel like a burden if you distort it. It can just feel like you're consciously choosing to put an extra weight on your backpack, and it doesn't have to be like that, right? It's just an understanding that you do have the choice, right? And of course, you can just wait for things to change, and some things will just not really change when they have to. But if you're not aligned with something, instead of just projecting that outwards, you can choose to take that responsibility for yourself, right? And it doesn't have to be heavy. It can be something that also actually becomes very freeing. And I think that's the main feeling for me, to just watch where I was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and just the amount of freedom that I now feel. And even right now, when something doesn't feel 100% aligned, or there's just the calling for the next level of something, sometimes this feels scary in the sense of, I don't know the way, I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do next, but I know that I have the choice. I know that I have the capability at least to find the way or the next small step. And yeah, and then I think as I was on my own journey, because I started to discover this just freedom that I create from within, it almost feels selfish not to want to share that. Right, and I think that's why I also wanted to become a facilitator myself, and just to be able to hold space for other people to do the same, because you just understand that everybody has that freedom, But as you said, like, we're just not in the way that it is set up right now. Not all of us are fortunate enough to just start with that option from the beginning, so to speak.
Yeah. How have you? Because I think what holds a lot of people back is the lack of certainty around these types of changes. Like, very rarely can you, like, predict exactly that this is this first step of how it's going to go, and then you already know step 2 and 3 and 4 and 50. Like, very rarely can you see the full picture. What has it been like for you to navigate the uncertainty around those changes, where, like, what all you can do and all you can see is, like, the next step?
Yeah, that's still one of the things that sometimes feels challenging for me, to not have that full certainty. But it's just been a journey of trusting yourself and something beyond yourself, in the sense that you do your part, you decide to show up. And I've always been so blessed and lucky to have the situations that would help me get to the next step, or the next step just presenting itself. And and then it just moves somehow towards a more magic direction. But I think it comes from the fact that when you are coming from not taking responsibility for your life and just blaming the external situations or circumstances, maybe you also don't have the certainty of where you're going necessarily, or you do have the certainty that you're going to stay in something that is not aligned for you, right? And by you deciding to take the responsibility, you're almost assuming that there's a possibility of better and something that it will be more aligned. And by trusting that, even though you don't have the certainty of what it is yet, you start developing the inner compass of, I can take this step or this step, but you know which one it's going towards that direction. And then eventually, as you take the next step and the next step, it starts showing.
Yeah. I feel that. Like for a lot of people, I've noticed live in like an illusion of certainty, when like there's no such thing for 99.999% of things in life.
Yeah.
And it's like we really feel like we're certain about what things look like and what life feels like, and it's just like it's an illusion. And it's kind of freeing in a way when you're like, oh yeah, like I don't have it all figured out. Life is messy. Like I wish everyone could have seen like the messiness of setting up the podcast, and my phone fell like down that way, and Nuno heroically like climbed down to like get the phone. Like life is messy.
Yeah.
And it's not certain in any way, shape, or form. But it's like we that's always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow by taking responsibility for that being the case and owning our power to then in that space of uncertainty create anything we'd like with it, is like, oh, like, and I'm specifically curious to hear more, like in your journey, what has it looked like to find that path of like authenticity, to find like your own pace, your own rhythm. Because we talk a lot about that. We talk so much about that. That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in a way it's complex because it's a big one for me, right? Because I feel like it's easy, or for such a long time it was so easy for me to just get off my own rhythm. And I'm making this responsible, as we're talking, conscious choice of wanting to create a reality that is more aligned, but still trying to meet not necessarily the expectations of others, but coming out of my own way, because I still think that I need to play somebody else's role to be what I want to be, or to get what I want to get. And I think right now it's more at the micro level, just the tiny little ways of how I start moving faster in life, and it's not my authentic rhythm. And what I notice is that every time, like the second that I relax back into my rhythm, life becomes aligned very fast again. And what I notice is precisely when those points of uncertainty come up, like as you were saying, like something is so certain, profession, a relationship, something, and all of a sudden it just changes. And in those moments, there's a part of me that wants to run faster, because I want to figure it out immediately, because it's uncertainty. And then when I come back to the rhythm and I just relax into myself, into my authenticity, and I come back to expressing myself fully, all of a sudden the situation that I thought was crumbling apart becomes even better. So it's always a bit of a plot twist.
Tends to be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, this was this week, I think. Like we were rock climbing and you noticed I was moving too fast, and you were like, hey, like you're not in your rhythm. So I really relate to the experience of, and we talk about this all the time, like the reason why we do this in nature, the reason why we love outdoor sports is like it's such a metaphor for life.
Mm-hmm.
It is such a perfect metaphor. And I noticed how I was climbing this really challenging route for me, which in itself is like a perfect concept, because for someone else it might be impossible, for someone else it might be a warm-up, like the easiest thing in the world. So it's like, it's so individual, it's so subjective. And for me, it felt really challenging. And my first instinct was to speed up, was like to go faster, and like it was messy and I was tiring myself and all of that. And I noticed that the moment you were like, you're not in, you told me like you're not in your rhythm, I noticed that all of a sudden like I start moving way slower, and I still don't finish the route, like on one end, but I had so much fun. Like it was so enjoyable.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I was getting unnecessarily tired, I was wasting a shitload of energy, and I still wasn't finishing it.
Yeah.
So I didn't finish it, and that's not the point. It felt so so aligned. How does that show up in our lives? Because this is not a conversation about climbing.
No, but if you allow me to add something that I specifically remember, you told me actually after you climbed down from that route, which was, after you told me that, as in I told you that, you said, I just noticed how I was speeding up, but then you told me that, I would rather 10 times just fall from this route, but I'm having a lot of fun because I'm in my rhythm. And that's such an important part of it, because you're not thinking about, is it going to work? Am I going to do it? Am I good enough to finish this route? You're actually just focusing on being in your rhythm, being in your authentic way of climbing that route, and just having fun. And that's the focus.
Yeah. And I'm looking at everyone. We're all in this together. Like, this shows up in our lives all the time. Like, whether it's work or in a relationship or communication, or I think for me the bigger one is work, for sure. It's like the tendency to want to speed up or slow down outside of our rhythm is like, it's so there. And especially I feel like our culture is like globally is very mental. There's a lot of mental energy, and the cadence of mental energy is a little bit faster than like heart energy and body, and like nature is like a lot slower. And we have a body. Our body doesn't run on mental energy. Our mind does. And so for a lot of us, that path, and for most people watching the podcast, like, they're going to be somehow interested in growth. So most likely what the path is going to look like for them is finding a slower rhythm than what they're usually used to. But I just wanted to clarify that the opposite might be true as well. That you might need to speed up and get stuff done and go out there and achieve and do all these things. Why do you think we have a tendency to not live in a rhythm?
Yeah. I mean, the simple answer, I would say it's probably because we believe that if people see us in another rhythm, then they'll get us what we're looking to get. But it's a distortion, right? So we probably condition ourselves to think that if I move faster, then I project a certain appearance and I'm more lovable, I'm more worthy. Or, for example, professionally speaking, usually in so many environments, unfortunately, there's just a pressure to always do more, right? So then you're conditioned that if I do more, I'm going to be more valued, I'm going to be better paid, whatever, right? So, and it's so easy to project this to then every area of your life, and just realizing that you can really only hurt yourself by not being in your rhythm and everyone around you, because then you're creating expectations by living in a version that is not really you.
Yeah. How does that show up in people's growth path? Because you and I talk about this a lot. It's shown up for us. We see it in people. Because it's very common for people to step into a personal growth journey still not from their rhythm, still from an expectation or an external pressure that they should be moving a certain way. They should be pacing at a certain speed. They should be arriving at a certain place by a certain time, and it should look like this or that. Like, how have you, what do you see people doing? What are some common patterns? And for you, how have you navigated finding your rhythm in your growth as well?
Yeah, I think the tendency is that you're going to bring the same patterns that you were bringing in every other area of your life, just now applied to personal development or your growth journey, whatever modality you're doing. What I can speak about me is that I brought the same pressure of overachieving, overdoing, speeding up, filling my schedule with personal development, the same way that I was doing, for example, with work, right? So I was doing a lot of modalities at the same time that served me in a certain way because it gave me so many perspectives, but it became overwhelming. And what you said was I think it really touches on something that was big for me, which is just this idea that I should be there already. What's even there, right? It's just this idea that you have a final destination and that you have a limited amount of time to get there. So you start moving faster, you start doing more than what is authentic for you, and you don't just give the space for the things that you're working on and discovering about yourself to actually integrate and start creating just a cascade of magical changes in your life.
Yeah. And it's so counterintuitive because, like, I remember you and I had so many moments like that this summer, especially, like, that's the thing that's freshest for me. Because we started climbing a lot outdoors, like, phenomenal weather.
Mm-hmm.
And we would, like, climb for hours in a regular, like, weekday morning. And then go for an ocean dip. And, like, I remember just feeling like I had escaped, like a rat wheel,
Mm-hmm.
or like an illusion, like type of Matrix type of situation, where things have never, like, I've never been more productive.
Yeah.
I've grown more professionally this year than ever in my life, and I know it's similar for you. And we've both made tremendous progress. Well, and I'm speaking about a context of work because it's usually easy for people to relate
Mm-hmm.
to. The fact that us slowing down or finding our pace and having more time, how on earth can that make someone more productive? Because it's so counterintuitive.
Yeah. I mean, I guess bringing back to what you were saying, mental energy, right? So mental energy justifies that if you move faster, you're going to do more. Well, there's this idea that if you work twice the amount of hours, you're going to be twice as productive, which is not true, right? I would actually dare to say that if most people were working 10% less or 20% less, they would actually be more productive, because most of us are just overworking in a way, right? And it's this idea that your output, whether it's work or just any other thing, you could just be creative without any association to a profession. It's not linear, right? And it's about finding your authentic rhythm, and from that place, you may actually have more energy available. And for me, what I felt like, as you were saying, there were just blocks of time, like, for example, going climbing on Tuesday morning and not having to think about work. That was something so foreign for me because, oh no, what do you mean? Like, from 9 to 6 or whatever, it's work. Like, and if I'm not working, I'm thinking about it at least, right? And just having that freedom that we created of a lifestyle where, no, that day is blocked to go rock climbing with Tiago, I don't care what's happening. And not having to think about work, I think that then that starts balancing things a bit more, because then when I'm working, I'm just working. And the fact that I have less time, it's even more enjoyable what I'm doing. I'm more passionate about what I'm doing, so somehow there's like a magical power that I unlock and my output is more. I'm more productive. But I'm actually going to bring a curveball. I think maybe the pattern for both of us is the tendency to go faster than what we're meant to. But actually in the last couple of weeks or maybe months, I noticed the opposite, right? Because I went so fast for such a long time, I had to slow it down. But then I noticed, it was the first time in my life that I noticed this, that maybe for a month or so, a part of me started to go too slow, in the sense that I became comfortable in that slow pace. And it's also not my authentic rhythm, right? And it doesn't mean that I have to start overachieving again, but I started to hide a bit in that slower rhythm. There's just the opportunity to do a little bit more. That is not about the number of hours, it's not about quantity. It's just about the presence that I bring to what matters to me.
Yeah, totally. And I think that paints such a beautiful picture for how, like, life is this constant ebb and flow. That's one of the many things I appreciate so much about nature, is that, like, you can, if you just pay attention, like, you can just see, like, nothing is stagnant. Nothing is like the same every day. It's like things are flowing, and some things move faster, some things move slower, some things have bigger cycles, some things have smaller cycles. But how have you learned, like, especially in these last couple of years, like, what are some of the things that you do or check-ins that you have with yourself to have that discernment? What is it that stands out to you that makes you see, oh, I'm not in my rhythm in the first place? And then how do you calibrate, like, I'm going too fast, I'm going too slow? And
Mm-hmm.
it might be different for different aspects of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely tend to see what starts happening when I'm out of my rhythm.
Mm.
Emotionally, I start seeing that I have more frustration in my life, especially relationships. If I'm out of my rhythm, the emotion that comes up the first is frustration. So it's almost like an external watcher that, oh, if there's frustration, probably there's some place where I'm out of my rhythm. Uh, Professionally, it's funny because for me, it's very physical. Um, I notice, for example, let's say I'm tidying up my room, and I actually notice that my body is moving faster. Like I'm walking around as if I'm running somewhere, and I'm literally just tidying up my room. And then first I notice the physical body that is moving faster, and then I notice, oh, my mind is racing about work, and this is not my authentic rhythm. I I'm in this second, I'm believing I have to move faster, so let me tidy up my room faster. So I go reply to some messages on work because someone is expecting me to do more, which is not true necessarily. I just created that distortion. So it's almost like just having that internal watcher where you start having specific clues of how you specifically um, are moving out of your rhythm.
Yeah. Yeah, and I resonate with that a lot, honestly, because it and it also starts building a lot of trust and self-respect, like self-trust and self-respect to know that, like, we're aware of where we are, because I've noticed that for a lot of us, one of the many things that internal growth reveals is how, in order for something different to show up in our lives, in order for something to be changed or transformed, it requires a different version of us to show up. And so inevitably, one of the things I would be super curious about to hear your perspective is, a lot of us talk about, like, creating visions or setting goals or, like, getting clear on what it is that we want. But for a lot of people, a lot of times, when you're setting that goal or when you're creating that vision, you're doing it from a version of yourself, like, as who you are today,
Yeah.
and how you're thinking about it, how you're envisioning what you want, how you're planning to get there. All of that is, like, off your rhythm. It's not fully authentic. And, like, as you do the inner work, your vision changes, your goals change. Why do you think that is, and, like, what's your experience been with that?
Yeah. That's I don't have the answer. That's the simple answer, because it's what you're saying, right? Just like you cannot solve a problem in the same way that you created it, like from the same mindset, from the same energy, from the same version. It's the same here, right? If you are defining goals for tomorrow, for 1 year, for 5 years, in the same version of where you are right now, you're projecting the same limitations. So it doesn't mean that there isn't space to grow, but it's almost like it's me just tomorrow. So I'm just doing the same things. And of course, if you're doing the same things, they still change. Um, I think it goes back to the certainty or the uncertainty in this case, where it's almost like there's need to be a little bit of fate or like a sprinkle of magic, where for me it's been about coming from visions that were very mental and objective and concrete, like numbers, and more about the energy in which I want to be, right? What's the vibe that I want to have in this area of my life? What's just the feeling when I think about this version of me that is living 1 year from now? And then it almost becomes like reverse engineering, where I usually just know like the one next small step, but I know where I'm moving towards in terms of how I want to feel when I wake up.
Yeah. I can almost, like, hear the voice of someone listening to this and be like, because I resonate with this a lot. You know that, like, that's how I live my life. And I can almost hear the voice of someone like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean you're not 100% clear on what you want? What do you mean
Yeah.
you're not 100%, like, what do you mean you don't have a 100% defined plan?
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I'm curious about. Like, how would you create context for someone who's asking themselves that? Because, for example, I see you manifesting the things that are important to you. So it's working. That's a fact.
Yeah.
what's the difference? Like, if someone is watching this and like within themselves exploring, like, if this is something they would like to try for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
like, especially like if there's a new year beginning, we're recording this at the end of 2024, it's probably going to come out in like the beginning of 2025. It's like fresh new year energy. And if someone is like thinking about what they want and what they want to create for the year, and if they're thinking like, well, maybe this is the year I set some goals and a vision,
Mm-hmm.
but also don't do it in this super specific way that it becomes restrictive, how would you support someone, or like what would you have to say to like inspire someone to feel confident in doing that and stepping into that space of enormous uncertainty?
Yeah. Yeah. Um. So I think if you're feeling a lot of uncertainty, then I think it's okay to actually go look for some certainty, right? So I actually said this to someone the other day. We can't allow what we don't know to stop us from doing what we do know. So if you're not 100% certain of what you want, you can start with what you don't want. Because in a way, as humans, for whatever reason, we're actually not just moved by desire of something, but we're also moved by moving away from something that we don't want, right? So you can start by identifying where are the situations in your life that you're not 100% clear, or you're not 100% aligned anymore. And by defining also what would you like to have less in your life, you can probably start finding the opposite of what would you like to have more. Maybe, for example, coming back to work, I don't want to work 8 hours per day. So, well, I know that I maybe want to work 4 hours per day, right? That's the opposite, for example. And maybe you don't necessarily can see how that fits in, but you can start connecting to that idea, and how does it feel for you to work that amount of hours, right? Because it's not about, I don't think it's ever about the physical circumstances. It's about what does that bring into your life? How does that make you feel? How would you feel in that situation? And I believe that you can always connect to the feeling of what you'd like to have, even if you don't have the full clarity of what that is in your life.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because often what happens, and I've noticed this in my own life and with many people, is if metaphorically, if there's only like a limited amount of bandwidth that we have
Mm-hmm.
to create, like as if it were like a computer's RAM memory, like if all that space is being filled by things that are not aligned, there isn't enough. There can be a situation where someone doesn't have enough space to create what's
Mm-hmm.
next, because there's a letting go of what's no longer serving that needs to happen first.
Yeah.
Because if the vision of what's next like occupies more space than you have available, that makes a lot of sense, because I can totally relate to periods of my life where I wanted to create whatever was next, but there was a letting go that needed to happen first. And to me personally, and I've seen for a lot of people too, that tends to be the most challenging to navigate.
Yeah.
The letting go. Especially if you're growth oriented. Most people who are growth oriented have more ease moving towards the next thing, moving towards the new thing, than letting go of something that has been present. And it doesn't even have to be something physical. It can be letting go of a way of being. It doesn't have to be like an actual thing in life, like a job, a relationship, a house. Like, it can just be a way of being, a way of behaving.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that it's so hard for us to let it go?
Yeah. I think it's because it's familiar, right? And it's familiar, and it has been certain. So you know it. It's been you. It's been a part of your life, maybe for years, maybe your whole life. And all of a sudden you're posed with this question of, oh, I'm not satisfied with this, but I have no idea what's going to come and actually make me satisfied. So let me hold on to it, because what happens in the gap? And the gap is where the magic happens, right? Because it's this leap of faith that you have to take where, okay, this has not been working, so let me get out of it, let me stop it, let me change it. But you're not certain of what's coming next yet. And that's But it's what you're saying, you know, if you never let go, it's probably going to be very hard for something to come in if all of your space is occupied.
Yeah. It's such a vulnerable place to be, because we're not necessarily always taught that not knowing, that not having a clue, that not having it figured out, that not having it together is a great thing sometimes.
Yeah.
And especially in those transition times, you would hope that that's what's happening. Because you're redefining yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you're finding new ways of being, new ways of existing in the world. And for a lot of us, the necessity or the perception that we need to have it together, that we need to have it figured out, that we need to know what's happening, how it's happening, hinders us from like discovering what's next. Like, in any hike, in any cool thing that you're doing outdoors, for example, that's always a great metaphor for me. If you're going into uncharted territory, by definition, you don't know what's happening. So it's like, if you haven't been there before, like whatever it is that people want to transform, like whether it's a relationship, a job, a lifestyle, like whatever it is, if you haven't been there before, if you haven't experienced it before, it's uncharted territory. What are some of the things that people can do? Because it's a skill. Navigating uncertainty, feeling grounded, and definitely the word is not comfortable. Like, it's very uncomfortable. So, but like feeling grounded, feeling authentic, feeling aligned, finding like an ease and a peace in lots of uncertainty and the unknown. Like, it's a skill. Like, it's something anyone can develop. What are some of the things people can like play around with and like experiment with to grow that skill?
Yeah, for me, one of the biggest things has been about creating internal safety. You know, because as you start developing that safety, you start being a bit more, I wouldn't say tuned out, but you're not so affected, at least negatively, by this instability that you may feel, right? Or as you take a step, you don't know what's going to happen, as you're saying, right? You're going into the woods and anything can happen. You know, over the top of the mountain, there can be just a beautiful view, or there can be a bear to eat me. And it's about developing that sense of trust in self, but also life. Trusting that it can only get better. If you have the good intention, if you're coming from that heart-centered place, it can only get better. And I believe that by starting to develop that internal safety, you start trusting a bit more each time, and a bit more and a bit more the uncertainty. And I don't think it ever gets not comfortable, or it just always continues to be uncomfortable. But it just starts becoming a bit easier to be in that space of uncertainty.
Yeah. One of the best metaphors I've ever heard about growth is like comparing it with going to the gym. It's so easy to understand. It's so simple. It's like, if you want to get in shape, you just don't go to the gym to lift weights that are comfortable.
Yeah.
You don't lift things that are like a breeze. That is going to weaken your body. Like, over time, with the right amount of, like, with the right nutrition and sleep, like all these things. So it's like a whole enveloping 360-degree approach. But focusing on just the gym, you lift things that are uncomfortable. And I so resonate with that. It's like, as you do things in life that are uncomfortable but aligned, they're aligned, but they put you in a space of uncertainty and discomfort. It's like you're lifting weights in the emotional, spiritual, mental gym of life, and you get stronger. And it's like, all of a sudden, like, fast forward a few years of doing that, you start experiencing life in such a different way, because you're more skilled and like just feels like more like spacious. But I also remember like starting my journey, and it just felt so overwhelming. Like, even hearing about people talking about different experiences of life, I remember feeling sometimes overwhelmed because there's so much to do, many things work for different people. Like we love breathwork. Some people might not. I love acupuncture. I know a lot of people who don't like acupuncture. Like there's so many different modalities, infinite things. And some people are going to like some things, some people not. So it's like, where can someone begin to like explore things that might work for them or not? What was that path for you? Like, what has it looked like for you to experiment with different ways of growing?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting way because sometimes it's hard to go back so many years and know exactly how I started. I look back and it just aligned by itself somehow. I believe that in those moments, sometimes it just really helps to have someone external, whether it's a friend or a mentor, that shows you the first step. And usually that just starts like a domino chain. But again, if you're coming from that place of growth, it's also coming just from a place of genuine curiosity, where you're willing to try different things and see what works for you and not. And it's what you said, like we love breathwork. That's a daily tool for me. But maybe some people, they will never touch breathwork and they're not supposed to, and that's okay. It's also about seeing what works for you, not for what other people told you. And for me specifically, I feel like I'm quite outwards in the way that I see life. So it was about gathering different tools and then starting to see how they combine. And maybe that took a while, just to pick what works for me of each one of those.
Yeah. If I may save probably most people watching this like decades, I'm gonna share like the best piece of advice I ever got regarding these things. I was like with a couple of mentors on a hike, and I've shared this with you. And I was going through a challenging time in my life, beginning of this year, and I was like asking for support, of, like how to navigate it. It's just like with the most loving, sweet face, like the most beautiful heart. They just turn to me and they're like, "Yeah, you can't get it wrong.
Yeah.
It'll be fine." Like if like whatever is meant for us in life, like if we miss an opportunity, another one will show up. Like whatever is like we're meant to let go of or is not like meant for us in life, if we don't let it go today, like tomorrow there will be a different opportunity. Like life is gonna keep presenting itself. And I remember listening to this, and just feeling like my whole body go like, and not in a sense of abdicating responsibility. I was not less fired up to transform my life and like make changes and keep growing. But it just felt like I found my rhythm again. Like I don't need to rush. And I wish someone had told me that when I was starting off. Like, step one, find your rhythm. Because like anything you do, anything you move, like any transformation you create in your life, like if you do it from your rhythm, oh my God, it's gonna feel so good. Even the challenging times, you're gonna navigate them better.
And how would you go about finding your rhythm?
Oof. The plot thickens. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of like what would it look like if I don't already know the things I know work.
Exactly.
For example, I've discovered that nature is really helpful for me. Hence why we're doing this in nature. It just feels so authentic for me. I think, so for me, what it has looked like, and I'm definitely not saying this is a recipe for everyone, is I'm the type of person who kind of needs to go out there and figure it out. Like I would rather be in the uncertainty and just like figure it out than be like sitting on my couch thinking about what it would be like. For me, it's been I think that would be pretty cool. So I go and try it. I think that might work. So I go and try it. And then whatever doesn't serve or doesn't work, I just like move on. And whatever works, like I keep it. But the number one thing for sure, obviously mentors have been immensely supportive. That's a huge part of my journey. And like game changer. Like I'm so on the same page with you on that. Is like if you can find someone who's already been through it, who can give you the steps, it makes it immensely helpful. The other thing I would add is, like, anything that someone can do to, like, question their own assumptions. Like, I don't know what that looks like for different people. It might be journaling, it might be psychotherapy, it might be going to events, it might be watching YouTube videos. But, like, exposing yourself to new possibilities. Because I remember, like, wanting to live, like, a certain lifestyle. And the moment I saw someone living it, I was like, boom, it's possible now. So now I just need to find a way to reach that person and learn what they know. And then I'll try it, and what works for me, I'll keep. What doesn't, I won't. But that was huge for me. Just, like, be playful with it and, like, experiment and go out and have a blast. Like, trying things out and making mistakes. Because, like, you build a huge portfolio of life experience that becomes really, really valuable to yourself. And it, like you said, like, it builds a lot of trust and faith. It's like that muscle of stepping into uncertainty grows stronger. Because the one thing I've definitely found is that you don't stop feeling scared of change. Then that's required to grow courage. Like, you don't stop feeling, like, I think that uncertain might not be the perfect word here. Like, you don't stop feeling the discomfort of not knowing. But the voice of, yeah, I'll figure it out, grows so loud because you have figured it out 1,000 times.
Yeah.
But it begins with putting yourself consistently in situations where you have no clue. You just don't know. Like, here we go. Should be fun. Let's rock.
Yeah.
Boy knows, we've kind of done that quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it's fun. Why, like, how do you think so one of the things that I'm super passionate about, that for a lot of people tends to be something that really moves them, is that as you grow yourself, eventually just you existing starts having a ripple effect into people around you. What has it been like for you to, like, just be on your own journey, like, do your thing, and, like, all of a sudden you start seeing that growth you're doing on yourself by allowing you to be, like, the best possible version you can be of yourself, like, right now? What a gift that can, like, provide for someone else. What has been your experience of that?
Yeah, I think more and more I just see, like, almost like a sacred responsibility, where it's not the goal, it's just a byproduct of choosing yourself, choosing growth. I remember that in the beginning it felt not a burden, but almost like there was a need for me to see that ripple effect. And then I just started to let go and more of it. And sometimes you just realize that you changing yourself also impacts everyone around you. And I think it's just beautiful because it starts creating a chain reaction where maybe you have the privilege of inspiring someone to make something, and then this person inspires you, and then you inspire someone else, and that someone else inspires someone else, and it just starts creating a beautiful reaction, chain reaction. And yeah, it's just something that makes me happy, to be honest.
Yeah.
It just makes me smile. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, totally. And, like, it's so wholesome. I also feel like it builds a lot of, like, it's very empowering, like a positive snowball effect. Especially I have noticed, like, in relationships, that it's often where we most think that the other person needs to change. Like, one of my favorite things to say is, like if it really was about, like, the external world is what needs to change, everyone in the world would be an asshole, Because
Yeah.
most people, for example, when they break up, it's like, oh, why did your relationship end? Because he or she was an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, it's always the other person's fault. And the math doesn't add up.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can't be. It can't be that.
More than 50% of the
Right?
people are
It
saying that.
cannot be. So it's so empowering to begin to see, like, holy shit, I just transformed this and this and this in myself. I just changed this and this and this. And all of a sudden, that challenging relationship at work just, like, solved itself.
Yeah.
That hard conversation happened and it was effortless. That family member that I really wish changed this and this and that just made the change, and I didn't even have to talk about it. And it's so non-linear. I think it's, for me, one of the biggest reasons why I do what I do. Like,
Yeah.
these breathwork things and growth, it's, you know, like, I've experienced that so much. Like, I have so many people in my life who inspire me. Like, you're obviously one of the main ones, where it's like I get to receive 24/7 the gift of your growth. And I know how awesome it feels to, like, wow, be so inspired by someone, and, like, how that invites me to grow into more
Yeah.
of me. And it's like, wow, like, the only way that I can, like, pass this gift on is, like, to share it with other people. It's like to grow myself and, like, let's see what that does for someone else. But I think there's also, like, an inner child in me who's also like, yeah, but it's also really fun. Like, I can't wait to see what can be created in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
How's that for you?
Yeah. You know, it's kind of like you're saying. It's like you start playing a game with just everything and every variable in your life, and just that opportunity. Like, what a gift! What a gift! It's actually quite intentional for me as well. Like, I've had people passing by me that didn't necessarily have a positive impact in that moment. I've seen other people in their lives not having a positive impact. Just what a freedom to choose that you're gonna have. Your presence is just gonna have a positive impact on someone else. And it doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be about you making a big gesture. It can just be, I worked on myself enough to know that most people are gonna feel safe around me. Like, just what a gift that you can bring to people.
Yeah.
And it stops being about you as well. I think that's the coolest part. Like, it stops being about you.
Yeah. I want to dive into something. Like, one of the, like, I'm on the back of my mind, I'm hearing our conversation. I'm like, one thing that you and I both know is definitely not true is that, like, as we grow and, like, we expand and, like, become more and more authentic, live more and more in our rhythm, life doesn't stop being messy and having challenges. Like, that's definitely not what's happening. It's like, obviously you become more skilled in navigating them, but then life has its way of being like, hey, like, here's more weight, because I know you got it, because I know you can, and this is the next step for you. I'm super curious to hear your take on that, because it, to be fully honest, it still kind of blows my mind, but it is true. Life has seasons. Like, it's not always like summer. Like, sometimes you have challenging moments. What has been the impact for you of, like, navigating those challenging moments, like, by having different tools and growing yourself?
Yeah.
Because it's definitely not the situation that, like, you grow and eventually, like, you create more alignment in your life and you never have a challenge again. You never have a hard time. Life never gets messy. But what's, like, what has changed for you in navigating those hard times?
I think it comes back to that muscle that you've developed, where there's just more trust, more ease, and you just feel more resourced. You know, picking up on the metaphor of the seasons, if we go quite literal, let's just say that you're going traveling and you have a backpack, and maybe you're going to be on all corners of the world, right? And maybe you know that you're going to have, like, a really hot summer where there's, like, 30 degrees, and then you're going to just a place where there's, like, 10 degrees but it rains a lot, and then you're going to a place where there's going to be minus 40 degrees, right? And if you pack just for the summer, it's going to be feeling very challenging when it starts pouring rain or when you go to the winter. And the opposite. If you just pack for a very hardcore winter and now you're in a super hot place, it's going to be very uncomfortable, right? And I think this whole metaphor is you've learned how to pack better. And you have found the tools that allow you to pack for all of the different weathers. And you learn how to appreciate it. And you've become skilled at predicting, oh, I know that next week is going to be raining, so let me start preparing from that. Let me change my clothes, let me, whatever, pack a different pack. And you just start feeling more prepared. It's still uncertain. You don't know if it's going to be raining, if it's going to be snowing, or if it's going to be super hot and you're going to be sweating, but you just know you got it because you're more equipped.
The packing geek in me. It's like I just had the best time listening to that. It was so good. That's a really good one. And it feels really true and authentic because it is like that. Like life is like that. And it's almost like it's even harder because, again, coming back to the uncertainty piece, you don't always know what the weather is going to be like. Like you can't always predict.
Yeah.
I would actually say, like, you pretty much can never predict.
Yeah.
And by having like a more like abundant set of skills, like, you know when things are going good. Like, you have tools and systems and frameworks in your life to like squeeze the juice out of that awesomeness, while at the same time like being packed up for challenging times and knowing how to make the best out of them. And often like that's what people struggle with the most, because we're not taught that in the center of those hardest challenges is like a beautiful gift that we're meant to receive, but we need to have the skill and the courage to dive into it rather than run away, shove it under the rug, pretend like it's not there. And over time, like it develops our character, and like it develops more clarity on who we are and what we stand for, what we value, by going through those things with the skills to be regulated, to be grounded or centered or whatever makes someone feel empowered in navigating it. And then you just move through life. It's like, it's winter, cool. Let's grab the skis and the snowboard and have some fun. It's summer, great. Grab the surfboard, let's go.
Yeah.
And I love that because it never stops being vulnerable and uncertain. You never stop feeling the discomfort. But if there's one wish that I had for like pretty much everyone in the world, is that people could have like an embodied experience that it can really be magical. Like it can really be like beyond anything we could ever dream of.
Mm-hmm.
Like life could be and feel like that. Like it is still messy, but so accessible. Yeah. And it's awesome. Like I feel so honored to be on this journey with you, and to be a phenomenally grateful and appreciative benefactor of your gifts. Like even, was it this week we did breathwork? Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like I was blown away. I was like, what do you mean? Like this is awesome. Like my best friend like is a phenomenal facilitator. And I think it's just such a phenomenal thing you're doing in the world, because your presence alone and the work you do is like creating so much space for people to have that experience. And I get to experience that a lot, and I couldn't feel more grateful. And if I'm actually curious, where do you see yourself? And this is coming up. I'm trusting this question, okay? Where do you see yourself, if anywhere, if you have any clarity, moving towards in terms of your facilitation? What are some of the things that you've been curious about that you want to innovate? Because you're very creative, Like you have a lot of different angles that you look at the
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. It's funny because when I think about facilitation, it's rarely about the tool itself. I think it's just so more about the intention that the person that is being facilitated brings and what you bring. And yes, then maybe you need to learn about breathwork, and for me it's also learning about, you know, music and how can I combine these different skills to just facilitate a whole journey, a whole experience. But for me, one of the main things, it starts actually with two things. One of them is what you're describing is like just the safety that you bring, because it's going to be very challenging to go anywhere without that safety, right? And the second part, it's kind of what you said. How can you somehow create this beautiful space where it's just going to increase the chances that these people are going to experience their own way? It's the vision of possibility, you know, that there's more, and trusting that they showed up for a reason. And yeah, but it's funny because I still love to explore the techniques and learn about it and see different perspectives, different cultures, different schools of thoughts. But just the way that we did breathwork this week, and the same way that you facilitated me, was I didn't have a single thought about the technique actually. I think maybe it was one of the first sessions where I didn't think at all about technique. It was just, how can I show up? And what's the impact that can have?
Yeah. Nuno, I will never be able to put into words how grateful I am for you. It's just like, I'll just keep being your bro and like chatting about all the things, and we'll have a lot of fun. But I'm so grateful for you. There's no one in the universe that I would rather have as first guest. And one of the favorite places like we come to all the time. We don't come here that often. It's not like a every month type of thing, but this is probably our favorite place to come, like when it comes to like hikes. Yeah, it just means the world to me. If anyone feels called to explore that infinite space of possibility with you, where can they reach out to you? Where can they follow you? How can they learn more about you and what you do?
Yeah. My website would be the main place, where then you can also just go to any other social media, Instagram or YouTube, but the website would be definitely the best one.
Which is going to be linked.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. We're doing YouTube now.
Yeah.
It's cool. And Spotify. Like, podcast going to be up. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate you. I love you deeply. And I'm so grateful to have you on the first, official interview.
I really feel the privilege of being your first guest.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait to see where this goes for you.
Yeah. Me too. I guess we'll figure it out. It's
Yeah,
very uncertain.
we're gonna
how
see.
Fitting. I have no fucking clue.
But we know it's going to be magical.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. If you like the episode, like, subscribe, do all the things, learn more about Nuno in the description, and I'll see you on the next one.